Welcome to the Soccer Curious podcast, the beautiful game explained, and our continuing coverage for newbies of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. This is a hot take post-game episode following the U.S. men's 2-0 victory against the Socceroos of Australia. My name is Ben Falk. Joining me to break it all down is soccer player, super fan, and my son, Benjamin Falk. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. Just watched a great game, I thought. Had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
The U.S. obviously pulled out the win there.
Incredible. It was an incredible game. Very interesting. We'll break it all down for you. So, first impression, how do you think the U.S. did in this game?
I was very happy. I thought that they got up the field very well, and obviously Australia was a bit more defensive, but I felt that the U.S., I really feel that their forward couple 3 or 4 up there, I thought really played well and were very good on the ball and were very good at creating crosses and chances and getting to those spots.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, this was as advertised, right? The U.S. was going to have much more of the ball. I can look up here and tell you exactly how much they had. And it was expected that Australia was going to sit in that low block, which is exactly what they did, right? Mm-hmm. And it was very tough, particularly in the first half, for Australia to break out of the low block. Yeah, the U.S. had 62% of the ball. Australia had 38% of the ball. So that's sort of what we expected, right?
Yes, for sure. Going into the game, I think most people thought the U.S. were going to win. And after that Paraguay game, I really felt that the U.S. were going to walk through Australia. But, it's the World Cup, and we've seen Spain and we've seen Portugal not pull through. So still an exciting game to go into and a little bit of uncertainty.
Yeah, it's a great point. Just overall, expected goals, U.S. of course was higher. Total shots, U.S. was higher. Shots on target were the same at about 2 apiece. Mm-hmm. Touches inside the opposition box. This is something we've talked about on the pod before. Against Paraguay, the U.S. had 53 touches. Against the Aussies, they only had 19, right? But part of that is because they're working the ball around a lot to get all that possession. So they're spending a lot of time in Australia's half. They're just not inside the penalty area, maybe as much as Pochettino would have wanted, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I also think that Australia, I think a lot of their touches and shots came much later in the game. I felt that for the first half and even for the first part of the second half, the U.S. was really in control and Australia was really kind of pressed in back. And I think that's because the U.S. were so adamant on getting forward and getting a goal. And then I think a little later in the game when the U.S. became a little more defensive is when Australia got some of those stats up. But I think for most of the game, the U.S. was really leading in terms of shots and chances.
Yeah, particularly the first half. So let's go through lineups. As advertised with the U.S., they basically started with more or less the same lineup they had started against Paraguay, with one huge exception, which is the Christian Pulisic still nursing this calf injury that apparently he originally picked up in training. It was exacerbated in the Paraguay game. He got kicked in the calf. So Pulisic, that attacking left side, did not start. And then in his place, sort of an interesting choice, which I would not have thought was Ricardo Pepi.
Yeah.
Were you surprised at that?
I was a little surprised at that, although I was pretty happy with that, and I thought he played it very well. I think it was a good choice from Pochettino. In that, he's a striker, but Pepi is not a, larger, slower, kind of just target striker. He does have some pace and some skill on the ball, and I felt that, putting him in a role where he's a little more on the ball and a little less central actually worked really well.
Yeah. And the Aussies, of course, are playing a much more defensive lineup. So they've got 5 across the back, 4 middies, and 1 lone attacker up there who is completely on an island by himself, just hoping to get a ball outletted on a counterattack. You have to say that the U.S. did a pretty decent job of picking apart that 5-back.
I think they actually did a very good job. I think it's very hard to get through there, and a lot of the time when the U.S. was getting near the box or was in that box, it was just so congested and it's so hard to get goals. But that's actually also why we see something like an own goal, where it's so congested and so much stuff is bouncing around in there that you can that's something like an own goal happens, or just deflections and stuff like that. So I actually thought the U.S. broke it down quite well for how blocked in Australia was and how many people they just had in the box at all times.
Right. So it's a good segue into the goal. So the first goal comes in the 11th minute. This is Fuller and Balogun gets all the way down to the end line. Looks like he's trying to cut a negative ball back. Sort of hits it with the outside of his boot. But instead of getting to a U.S. player, it's another own goal, which that's how the U.S. started against Paraguay. It was such a weird moment. I didn't even know what happened at first. It was so bang, bang. The reality is that Pepe was crashing the box. I think that ball gets to Pepe if that defender doesn't stick the boot out, but the defender does, Burgess, and goes in their own net.
Yeah, and I think that goal was really a product of some fast play, and also Australia wasn't as backed in that moment. I think Balogun kind of got that ball and sprinted down the line, and Australia was sprinting back, and there was so much chaos kind of crashing into the box that's how that own goal happened.
Yeah, and in a World Cup of firsts where the U.S. it feels like they're doing all these things for the first time, scoring 4 goals, having a brace for a player. This is the first time, apparently, in World Cup history that there are successive own goals at the start of a game for one team. So that's that's pretty cool. 44th minute, we earn a free kick down just outside of the penalty area on the right-hand side. Jedi Robinson takes the kick, presumably lefty for it to be an in-swinger, but instead passes it to the top of the box for Dest. Dest then hits it. He caroms off an Australian player and goes right to Alex Freeman, who puts it in the net. There originally is this, they call offside, there's a VAR review, and after the VAR review, you see that by the pretty slim margin, an Aussie player has his back leg stuck out that keeps Freeman on.
I actually really like the setup to that goal. So obviously it was a free kick right outside the box on the side, so it was essentially like a short corner. And I like that they went to the top of the box with Dest.
Yeah.
I was actually a little surprised he got the shot off. I thought he was going to one-time, and then when he took a touch, he was a little late on that. But I really liked that play, and I really thought that ball was maybe going in. And then they blocked it, and again, just when you keep attacking against a low block and you keep attacking, chaos is just going to happen, and that's kind of what happened there. They had everyone blocked in, and when they shot that, just bodies kind of crashed over each other, and Alex Freeman was able to come up with the header right before the goalie grabbed it, which was nice. But I think that is kind of when another team is playing a low block. I think the U.S. kind of actually did a good job of hammering again and again, even when it didn't work, and that's kind of how they produced that second goal.
Yeah, and you have to say that if the U.S. is drawing up a game plan, being 2-0 at the half is about the best it's going to be against anybody in the World Cup, and particularly against this Australian, this much vaunted low block where they're very chippy, they're kicking at ankles, they're pushing and shoving, grabbing shirts, doing all this stuff to prevent all of that from happening. To be 2 goals to the good at halftime, I mean, Pochettino must have been super psyched.
Yeah, I think that's exactly where you want to be, and it gives your team a little bit of time to get used to keeping a lead and kind of staving off a team that's down and is trying to come back, and that's some good experience in your second game of the World Cup.
Yeah. If I had one criticism, it was in the first part of the second half, where it felt like the U.S. came out a little flat. Australia was threatening to get back into the game a little bit. The old 2-0 is the most dangerous lead in soccer because you sort of take the foot off the gas and you let them back in before you know it, it's 2-1. It's just that in this case, that didn't happen. I don't think Australia has the quality. The U.S. managed to sort of fight through this moment of switching off a little bit.
Yeah.
And then there were some well-timed subs that came in to sort of clean things up.
Yeah, I think so, but I do agree that having a period like that against a better team who has better attackers
will cost you. Yeah.
Right, could very much cost you, could be a large mistake, and you don't want to let a team, if you're up 2-0 at the half, you don't want to give a goal or two away at the start of the second half. That's really going to deflate all your momentum. So I think that's something they got to work on, but I still think they played it pretty well.
Yeah. So we were at a watch party here at producer Naren's house, and one of the things that people were talking about was how chippy the game was getting.
Yeah.
Australia's getting frustrated. They need goals. It's not falling for them. They keep giving away balls. Fouls keep happening. That is part of the game. It's not necessarily as much of a part as the U.S. will see later on in the tournament where they're not playing these low block teams.
Yes, I think that is true, is that the U.S. is going to have to get used to not also getting a lot of chances. When they play against these low block teams, you kind of get chance after chance.
Right.
Low block team, they don't really have an attack to get it up to and stuff like that. And so when the U.S. plays a more equal game, which I think may happen soon, it may happen against Turkey, maybe after that, we don't really know. But when that happens, they have to make sure that they minimize the mistakes, and that going forward, they're more efficient because they're not going to get the same amount of chances.
Right, makes sense. Standouts. in this game. It was a balanced performance, I thought. I didn't think anybody was like clearly head and shoulders above everybody else. My guess would be your 2 or 3 standouts. I thought Balogun had a really good game. I thought McKennie was very effective. I thought Malik Tillman was effective. I thought Alex Freeman, sort of the rookie, one of the big discoveries of the Pochettino era is this guy Alex Freeman, who's now came from Major League Soccer, is now at Villarreal. Was great in this game. Who stood out for you?
Yeah, I think Balogun did very well. Obviously, he made that first goal happen, and he's always a kind of a nuisance at the top. And when playing against a team in a low block, your striker has to be good and has to be making some disturbances up there, or it's very hard for you to get up the field and do anything. So I thought he was very good. Tillman, I thought was good. He was on the ball a lot, which was very nice. Freeman, I actually thought was good. Even without his goal, there was a couple times that I was like, wow, he's really getting forward well and really kind of advancing the ball up the pitch really well.
Right.
And actually, I thought Dest was very good too. I thought he was very efficient on the right side, kind of getting down there and get some crosses in. But I would also agree that there wasn't a real big standout. But yeah, I mean, I'd also mention Anthony Robinson played a pretty good game.
Yeah, he was very good, yeah.
And
yeah,
I
a
would
balanced
say,
performance.
Yes, overall, I would say.
And what about the coach? Put the Poch report card. How do we think Pochettino did in this game? It felt like the tactics were what we would have expected. Definitely in the first half, we were on our front foot the whole time. Again, a little bit of a letdown in the second half. But then a bunch of substitutions. I mean, there are guys who are getting into this game like Joe Scally, Austin Trusty, who have not seen a minute yet in the World Cup. I do appreciate that idea of giving time to these guys. The conventional wisdom often is you're going to only play maybe 14 people in the entire World Cup. Right. But he's stretching out his bench a little bit. What did you think of Poch in this game?
I actually thought that, the big question for me at the start is what is he going to do if Pulisic doesn't play? And then when Pulisic doesn't play, I actually thought he handled that very well. And I thought that Pepe played very well, and he played as you wanted him to in that position and everything. And I thought that was very good. I thought the first half was great. I thought they played very well. Second half, obviously, again, like I mentioned earlier, when you take your foot off the gas of scoring, it does kind of even the game out a little more. But I thought that defensively they were a little shaky, and that's not all on Pochettino, but I thought that they could have been kept a little more energy going there. But then I actually thought that the subs were good, and I think he made a lot of subs, which was smart. And as much weaker as the subs are, they're still probably not going to give up a 2-goal lead to Australia. So I wasn't concerned with any of that. And I think it's good for those guys to get on the field and get some touches in, and to just get a little look at them and kind of see what they can help provide. So I actually thought he did quite well. Do you grade his? Do you actually give him a letter grade?
We can, sure. What would you give?
I mean, I would say it was a good B game, good B minus,
B plus.
Yeah,
that's
somewhere in there. I think that was pretty good.
If Paraguay was an A or an A minus, this was more like a B plus, but very solid.
And
so also interestingly, the big sort of talking point going into this game was the U.S. disrespecting Australia, the Australian players, and Australia was going to really take it to the U.S. and all that stuff. It turned out to be a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah.
Like Australia was as advertised, not strong enough, not of enough quality, not of enough quality players. And as God is my witness, I texted with a good buddy of mine, my English friend Aaron Baxter, who asked me, what's the score going to be? And I said 2-0. And I was right.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's a pretty good prediction. I actually would have liked to see the U.S., and I totally think they could have put another goal or two in the net, for sure. But I thought that was good. In Australia, low blocking, they are a big athletic team, and it can be quite hard to get a goal past them, especially on, when you're attacking so much, you're getting so many corners and stuff, and they have all these tall guys. It's very hard to produce some of those goals. So I actually thought we did pretty well, but they, especially in the first half, Australia had a real lack of attacking threat that you could kind of feel. And they just in the first half, they really didn't feel dangerous at all. And it kind of felt like the U.S. could kind of just take a chance, see if it worked, and then reset in 30 seconds and get another chance off. And yeah.
Okay, so looking ahead, so we may know as early as the end of today whether or not the U.S. is going to be the top seed in Group D. We do know, based on this win, they now have 6 points. They have punched their ticket to the next round. They have punched their ticket to the round of 32, which is super exciting. So now the only question is, will they be the top seed or the second seed? that does matter because the top seed has a slightly easier path through the tournament because the top seeds end up playing a third place team from another bracket as opposed to having to play a higher team from another bracket. So we will know that later today because the other two teams in the bracket, Turkey and Paraguay, play each other. So if Paraguay wins that game or Turkey and Paraguay tie that game, then mathematically the U.S. will already know it is the top seed heading into the rest of the tournament before they've even played their third game. So fingers crossed that Paraguay manages to eke out a tie or a win against Turkey. Tall order. But how do you feel about Turkey v. Paraguay? What's your prediction on that?
Well, I really think Turkey should take that.
Me too.
Again, I really thought Turkey should take the Australia game, but I would still think Turkey's going to win that against Paraguay, but I think it might be a little closer. And I think Turkey might have a few holes in them that we didn't really see going into this tournament. So
yeah, they did not look great in the first game.
I honestly, my prediction is probably like a 2-0, 2-1 Turkey, but I could definitely see a tie coming out of that game later today and putting the U.S. at the top of the group.
Which would be phenomenal for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is that then when the United States plays their third game, which is against Turkey, the score doesn't matter. So they can rest players, they can make tactical changes, they can do all sorts of things and get ready for the round of 32, which is super exciting. Cool. All right. This has been our Hot Takes post-game episode of the Soccer Curious podcast. Please stay tuned for future episodes next week. We will be looking forward to that Turkey game as the U.S. men march on after a definitive victory today against Australia. My thanks to Ben Falk for joining me. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe and tell your friends. If you have a comment or question, we love those. So please email us at soccercuriouspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. See you next time.